Is it true that the employment rate of ethnic minorities in the UK is less than others? And is it true that they're more likely to be on benefits compared to others? Let's look at the facts and figures and get to the truth of that. Right. So this is the percentage of 16 to 64-year-olds who are employed by ethnicity. Time period is 2022, location England, Wales, and Scotland. The average is 76% of all ethnicities. Asian is at 70% of 16 to 64-year-olds who are employed, so below average. Indian is at 77%. Pakistani and Bangladesh is at 61%, which is actually the lowest. And I'm going to go into why that is, because that's very interesting. So Asian actually includes Indian, Pakistani, Asian other. This is just the average of Asian. You've got black, which is at 69% below, mixed below, white is at 77%, white British it's at 76%, so kind of the average. And white other is at 82%, very high. Other is 68%, which is the second lowest. Now, when you go into those figures and separate them between male and female, it gets very interesting. This is the same figures, but separated between men and women. When you look at Asian, which is 70% for both, Asian men is at 79%, which is actually the same as the average of 79%. But the Asian women is much lower at 61% compared to 72% for all women average. When you look at Pakistani and Bangladesh, which was the lowest for both men and women at 61% combined, but when you separate the men, it's at 75%, which is very similar to the average of 79%. But for the women, it's at 46%, which is the lowest and much lower than the average of 72%. And the reason why that is because of the family unit and the kind of cultural structure of that family unit, where typically it's the women would stay at home to take care of the kids and the men would go to work, kind of the traditional way of having that family. Which, when you look at the birth figures, it corresponds to that. There's a lot more kids coming from societies that societies that have women work less compared to the societies where you have women work more. Obviously, when you work less, you have more time to have kids. And that's impacting. When you look at the figures for all of Europe, fertility rates are down. They're mostly down for kind of the white population. And when you look at the employment rate for that, look at white British, 76% combined. The men is at 79% and the woman is at 74%. It's very high, which is a great thing for women to be working, but obviously everything has a consequence to it. For white other, look at the white other, 82%, when for men it's 86% working, employed, and white other women is at 79%. This is the highest employment rate, which is amazing. So it's amazing that women work and participate in the labor market, but obviously there is a consequence to that because they have less time compared to other people that don't work for obvious reasons. And that impacts how many kids they can have. Maybe they don't want to have kids, but it impacts the birth rate for each of these segments of society. And when you look at benefits, it's also very interesting. So these are the figures in the United Kingdom, 3 years combined from 2018 to 2021. The percentage of families receiving state support by ethnicity and type of support. So for any state support, which includes all of those and more, for any state support, 51% of families receive some kind of state support. Asian families are actually less, at 42% receive some kind of state support. Black is on the average, mixed is below, white is slightly above. So most of the state support goes to the white population. And the least amount goes to mixed and other. Now, when it comes to tax credits is mostly given to Asian, Black, mixed. The average is 6%, for white is 5%, so it's just below that. When it comes to income-related benefits, so this is benefits that allow you, that's dependent on your income, i.e. if you have a low income, you get more of these benefits. That includes, for example, childcare or sometimes, income to allow you to meet a certain threshold that's paid on top of the income that you already receive because you don't receive enough from your work, which is crazy to think about, but that's another subject. Most of it, so average is 16%, Asian is at 14%, Black is at 24%, that's much higher, mixed is 17%, white's 15%, so just below the average, and others at 18%. When it comes to non-income related benefits, so this is something like pensions, It's not dependent on your income. Everyone receives a state pension if you have met the conditions of the working years. 48% is the average. Asian is much below that. Black is at 44% and white is at 50%, so just above average. So the reality is that most of the benefits for white people, it matches just above sometimes the average. But Asians are lower than average. It's interesting to see black families getting quite a bit of a lot of those benefits in more proportion than others. So that's interesting. But it doesn't, the whole idea, this concept that I've seen this a lot, most Asian families or ethnic minorities are on benefits, they don't work. The figures don't support that really at all. In fact, most of the benefits do go to white families as a proportion of the general population. So going back to employment by ethnicity, it's really interesting because there's a lot of data about employment by ethnicity in each different industry. So I was looking at the NHS, which is one of the biggest public employers in the UK, the National Health Service. And just for comparison, the Asian population is 8.5% of the general population. Black is at 4% of the general population. White is at 81.8% of the general population. So Asians are overrepresented in the NHS, and it just shows how reliant the NHS is on ethnic minorities. It's double for the black because the black population is only 4%, and it's nearly double for the Asian. But when you look at, so it's interesting, ambulance staff is mostly white. Really interesting. NHS doctors, 32% are Asian. I was really surprised by that. Well, I guess not surprised if you've used the NHS, right? Midwives is mostly white, overrepresented for white. But nurses and health visitors, blacks at 10.7%. Remember, the black population is only 4%. So it was very interesting how reliant the National Health Service is on ethnic minorities. There you have it. These are the facts right in front of you. If you do like more facts and figures, do hit the like or follow and subscribe. And let me know what was interesting from those figures and facts for you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.